What's going on, everyone? So today I wanted to talk a little bit more mid-game strategy. I've spoken a lot about free-to-play early game progression plan and just in general some things to think about as you're approaching at certain points in the game relatively early on. But certainly after you get past the initial getting your legendary S rank weapon, getting past really the first couple of months, you start to enter this mid-game period where everything takes a lot longer, the progression is more gradual, and there's overarching strategies that you want to be focused on in order to prepare yourself for the best progression path for the late game. Now, what would I define as mid-game? Well, certainly if you do not have your mythic weapon, you are not in the late game, period. Mythic gear entirely, honestly, the entirety of your gear being at mythic level is what I would constitute a mythic player at the late game. Usually by the time you get your mythic gear across the board, that's when you've entered the final stages and you've progressed through basically everything in the game, and you're really just kind of min-maxing at that point, which means the mid game constitutes the majority of the game. Early game, you're still working on getting your build situated, getting your first legendary weapons, getting your brands and heroes, basically just building your build in the first place, having the pieces in place. The mid game is where you hammer those out and you actually progress them to the late game. And so your whole focus here is resource acquisition, how to maximize everything in your build. And the number one most important thing is by far getting your mythic weapon. This should be your number one goal. This should be your number one thing to be progressing towards. Now, one of the big things about this is usually the bottleneck, and as you can see here for me, is not actually the S rank weapons themselves. It's the gear pieces associated with it. So if you take a look here, yes, I have 2+2 whispers here, and I'm going to need about 4 more whispers before I can get a mythic whisper. But actually, the bottleneck isn't going to be getting those 4 whispers. In fact, I've been summoning on banners that don't even include the whisper, and I haven't even been looking for boxes that include S rank weapons. Why? Because I need more pieces of gear to actually get the legendary upgrades for these whispers to get to +3 so that I can actually have a mythic whisper. That is the main bottleneck, which means one of your main priorities in the mid game should be accumulating as many keys as you possibly can. Heck, if you look here, I've used all my keys, all my legendary keys on this banner because I'm looking for Bloody Grail and Judgment Ring. I've basically done all of my key farming. The gold and silver keys reset just happened a little bit ago for me, and so, well, got to pick up those free ones, but I still have 443 pulls towards the limited secret chest, which means if I wanted to right now, I could pick up 2 more whisperers, which basically puts me in the clear. Again, picking up as many keys as possible. It's not just legendary keys, it's gold keys as well, which you could definitely pick up in various different shops. So any event that comes by, any exchange that you can do, you need to be picking up keys. That is how you get your gear. And this applies throughout the entirety of the game. In the mid game, you need to be getting mythic gear, which means every single piece of gear that you pick up is immensely valuable. Now, fortunately for you, when you're farming for your mythic weapon, you're also going to get a ton of pieces of gear for your armors and your rings and your accessories. So by the time you get to a mythic weapon, you should be relatively close to getting to a mythic ring and a mythic accessory as well. So that is going to help you out immensely. If you look at the rates here, there is a significant portion of it that's going to be dedicated towards your accessories, your rings, and your, well, weapons and armor, right? You can see 0.45% chance total for an armor piece, where it is actually 0.9% chance for your rings. So by the time you get your mythic weapon and farm up all those pieces of gear, you should have a lot of pieces of gear to kind of maximize your other rings and accessories. That's not the only thing you should be focused on, though. One of the other big things is actually getting your upgrades in your brands and heroes. This is a major progression portion. And when I say mythic weapon and sort of progressing your heroes and brands, I do mean the mythic stat line. Every single tier here is going to give you a massive bonus. Once you get to mythic, the +1, 2, 3, 4 is just min-maxing the stats themselves. It's not actually giving you huge bonuses to your overall build. That said, the stats are still important, but for example, getting the Joker to a mythic tier is going to give me a massive global skill damage increase. Getting the Rogue to mythic tier is going to give all daggers Fire Wave, which is going to massively change my build. Giving, well, the Wild Vulture is one of the exceptions, but getting Nurgle Murloc to mythic tier is going to give me access to Combo Plus when I start each battle, which is additional combo rate. All of these things are massively important, and the same thing applies to your heroes. Getting a mythic tier Knight of the End is going to give me a bunch of attack power based on the shield. Spring Orchid, which I'm definitely changing this as soon as I get the Ghost Legacy a little bit deeper. Well, I'm going to get massive bonuses for whatever tier I unlock. So when you're looking at resources that you can get from events, yes, you should be focused on keys. Number 1. Number 2 should be wishing scrolls and actually hero and brand chests. I know you could pick up the weapon chests and get access to an S rank piece of weapon, or you could get access to, if you look over here, the well, we are on a sold out chest here, an armor box or a accessory box or a ring box. But honestly, these you will accumulate, as I said, over time, because the bottleneck is the actual resources themselves. So getting these boxes isn't actually that much of a progression boost, because you're sitting on +3 for so long while you're accumulating all those pieces of gear to actually progress you that much further. In the meantime, what you should be really trying to acquire are things like this Mark Prize box, where I can get access to the Joker or the Skeleton Spellblade or whatever brand or hero you're looking for. And the same thing applies to the exchange shop. Getting access to the limited brands, getting access to the legacies, and getting access to all those upgrades is a massive boost for your overall progression. Getting access to at least mythic tier is going to really boost your overall build potential. Whether it's damage or survivability, it's going to help you progress further and further into the chapters, into the various dungeon stages. But again, that's not all the things you should be thinking about. Yes, you should be focused on gear and getting keys, but you also should have enough resources to be able to get heroes and brands. And even further, you should have enough resources to be focusing on other things at the same time because of the way the events work in this game and the growth events and all that stuff. And that third thing is the inheritance, focusing on acquiring books. Now you'll notice here I have a ton of Paladin books or Knight books. I have a ton of Skeleton books, but that's just because I have really prioritized certain heroes and brands which have drained my Ranger and my Ghost books. But you're going to need all those books for the inheritance itself, and you're also going to need those books for all your heroes and brands, right? I cannot actually progress the Joker, otherwise I'd fully invest into him right now, without those Ranger books. I'm still waiting on the Joker pieces, but I'm still going to need more books for the Murloc. I'm going to need more books for the Vulture getting up to mythic tier. I'm going to need more books for the Rogue to get +1, +2, etc. I'm going to need more books for the Knight of the End. And as you get deeper into the game and you start to be able to participate in these events regularly, you're going to realize that these books are incredibly important for you. And along that note, I should also mention elite packs, because elite packs are not only useful for the inheritance progression themselves, but the books and elite packs are both incredibly important for the actual progression of your heroes if you're using an inheritance hero. And most builds will be, as of right now, due to the Ghost inheritance, getting the Ghost Princess or the Cryberry baby being so incredibly important. So you're going to need books, you're going to need elite packs, and you're going to use them continuously on the inheritance as you're progressing. So even if you run out of Ghost books, let's say, and you're progressing the Ghost, you're going to double back over to the Skeleton and start progressing the Skeleton's inheritance tree. And those are going to require books as well. So making sure you're accumulating as many books as possible, which includes going into the black market every day and buying up as many as possible. I've been avoiding the dragon books just because they are twice as expensive and we don't have the dragon yet. I would imagine by the time the dragon comes out, it would be a little bit further down the line. I'd still have other places to progress the inheritance. I could regret this one. You can make that decision for yourself. I just know that for me, it's still a ways away before I progress the Ghost inheritance to the bottom. So I'm not going to have to worry about dragon books. But, you know, like I said, I could regret that when the time comes. So if I'm focusing on keys, I'm focusing on heroes and brands, I'm focusing on the books, what else can I focus on? Little side note here, when I'm talking about heroes and brands, I also include the wishing scrolls. Make sure you're accumulating as many as possible, especially in these events. What else can I consider? Well, I would also be considering the adventurer. Now, I just got my 1-star dragon girl, but in the current meta of the game with the residents, yes, you should still be picking up every single chance you get the big adventure tokens and spinning as many chances as you get, because you can redeem those further adventures. And even if, let's say, you do not utilize the dragoness or the dragon girl, and you're going to be using Leonardo or Raphael or whatever it is, you're still going to want to get these progression boosts, because it's so rare to get these little stars on your adventures, because it only comes with the big adventure. 1-star Wukong, 1-star Gagarin, 1-star Little Bear is all going to boost your overall adventures. This is the #1 event you never want to miss. The Mystic Sea, the Treasure Team, you can miss those because they're, well, not nearly as big of progression boost, but also in the Treasure Team's case, a lot of that stuff can be acquired. Not the Arcana, that is, but the Arcana, again, less important, but the other, extra universal crystals or whatever can be acquired over time. The big adventurer and the adventurers in general are going to be the biggest combat power and overall boost in progression. And so this is the one you never want to miss if you can avoid it. And this is going to be a really, really useful point, especially if you are using the Dragon Girl and maybe you're a free-to-play player and you weren't able to min-max the Ninja Turtle event or whatever event that's going to give us future copies of Mythic Adventurers. And guess what? That's going to hinder your progression a lot, because you're going to be bottlenecked in terms of capping out your stats behind a time-gated event, which is the Adventurers. Again, these are time-gated, unlike everything else on this list, which is also, I guess, time-gated because you're based on the events and such, but those ones are just kind of natural progression as you're going along and doing your dailies. Whereas the Adventurer, even if you are doing your dailies and you're accumulating resources and all this stuff and accumulating gems, you're not going to be able to buy your way to an Adventurer, because it is based on every single time the events come around. Whereas if you accumulate a ton of gems, you can very easily spend all your gems very quickly on a bunch of events to get that progression immediately. So making sure you're paying attention to those adventures. And the other progression tip that I wanted to just add here really quickly is to make sure to stay on track. Changing up your build, assuming you are running with the free-to-play progression build, which is the Angel Bow, or you could be running the Blade of Justice with Raphael these days. You're going to want to stay on path until you reach that mythic gear tier, then transition into whatever weapon you're looking for, and your rings and accessories should kind of reflect this exact layout. Guardian Ring, Icy Bubble, Bloody Grail are all three exceptional and basically applicable to every single build. Judgment Ring also typically falls into that pattern, but it depends. Blade of Justice is one of those that doesn't. But the same thing applies across all builds, is you should be laser focused. If you're waffling and changing things up before you even reach the late game, before you reach mythic tier, it's going to slow you down immensely. And that's something you don't want to have happened. If you can, don't even think about anything else until you've maxed out these three dungeons: Raid Dragon's Lair, Raid Celestial Tree, and Raid Phantom Sword Island. These three, if you're doing this every single day at max tier, you're at least getting the most energy, the most food and pet eggs, the most chests as possible, which are going to be nice little bonuses. The Temple of Tides is arguably the most important of these dungeons, but this is way, way more difficult for you to progress comparatively to these other three. And the same thing applies to all the other areas of the game, right? Just making sure you're progressing as many resources as possible. But if you can, try to get that max level before you even consider changing your build. Because if you change your build and you waffle a little bit, you might be set back, and that could slow down your overall resource generation, because every day that goes by that you don't have the max tier, you're slowing yourself down. That said, those are some things I'm thinking about as a mid-game player myself. I am definitely not a late-game player. I'm reaching there slowly but surely, but I still got ways to go. I don't even have a mythic tier ring or accessories. That's partly due to my own waffling and my own changing up things, my lack of focus in terms of what I should have been doing. I shouldn't have been +1ing this ring. I should just be going for a mythic ring in very, very specific. But those are future videos and topics in general. Thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below, and I will see you all for a video